This is Internet Marketing.
Hello and welcome to the Internet Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the team behind brightonSEO. So in today's episode, what we're going to be talking about, well, I'm joined by two exceptional guests, two people I'm a huge fan of. So of course, very excited to have a conversation with them. So I'm joined by Areej AbuAli from Women in Tech SEO, a really exciting and dynamic community for people working in technical SEO and SEO more broadly. And Kirsty Hulse, who runs a event called Confidence Live and is a confidence trainer and consultant. It's a really interesting episode. I think you're going to take a lot away from it. Hello, yeah, I'm really excited today to be joined by two people who I've known for a number of years in kind of the broader digital marketing space, and I've been very inspired by and admiring from a distance the great work that they're doing in their various different areas. As always, when I kind of start the show, we're going to talk a bit about community. We're going to talk a bit about events. I think we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, actually, because I'm joined by two people I'm really interested to pick their minds on things. But yeah, Areej, is it all right to get you to come first and kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story, how you came to be working on what you're working on currently, and that kind of the whistle-stop Areej story.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. You two are two of my very, very favorite people, so I get to spend the morning with you. I am working on a beautiful community that is very close to my heart. That's called Women in Tech SEO. It's going to be our 5-year anniversary this year, and a lot of it started from very selfish reasons of wanting to find the space for me, like a place where I can belong. And that's how it kind of, I was like, well, let me just create like a group where I can feel like I can fit in and see who else might be interested to join. And yeah, it's been a crazy 5 years. I definitely did not expect it to grow to this extent. We are both, we have both online communities and in-person events. Our communities are on Slack and Facebook, a little over 8,000 of us. And this year we are holding conferences in London, Berlin, and Philadelphia, which is amazing. And I love getting to work on this and meet a lot of really, really brilliant people. And I think just being here, it feels very full circle because Kelvin, like through Brighton SEO, it's where I got a lot of my first opportunities. It's where I first started networking with people. And then Kirsty was one of our, I think the very first speaker I reached out to for our very first conference. And I was like, I'm doing this thing. No one knows about it. Can you please speak? And you replied right away. And you said, yes, I'll be there. So this is very, very close to my heart being here with the two of you.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think what's really interesting, we'll delve into this in more detail, is like, yeah, it's the sense of connected community as well. So in the different forms that you've got, which I think is really interesting, something I'm really keen to delve into, because obviously I'm kind of like from an events background now, I suppose, but kind of it's predominantly in person. And whereas Women in Tech SEO, you've got this online aspect to it, you've got this, in different places, and of course mentorship and all kinds of stuff like that. So we will come to that in a second. But yeah, a really inspirational journey on the setting up that community. And I think our listeners and viewers, if they've not come across it before, should definitely check it out. Kirsty, can we get the Kirsty version of the equivalent of that story as well?
It's so nice to hear, and I was actually like thinking the influence I think we probably all had on each other in a subtle way. So my background is I worked in SEO for years, was on the speaker circuit, early days of SEO before Areej was creating amazing communities. And I started, it was maybe 2000, I want to say 15, and I was speaking at an event over in Germany, and it was me and like 15 white dudes that were the speakers. So I started giving free presentation training to women to try and do a bit to level the playing field. And through that, I kind of fell into doing confidence training, presentation training. And so I kind of left the world of SEO. I don't think you ever really leave. Left the world.
It's like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you can't go. It's there forever. It's in your, and you. Crazy aside here, but you do pick things up. So as we're recording this, a lot of the stuff was kind of going on with Kate Middleton. So who knows where that'll be by the time we actually publish this. But yeah, you start to notice things like, oh, there's this profile been written about, and like this SEO mindset is with you forever, right? You kind of, as soon as you understand how web publishing and search engines work, it's kind of there at the back of your brain, and you can be ending up doing something completely different, but you still have a bit of a search marketer's mindset, I think, sometimes. Sorry, Kirsty, I've interrupted you. You were telling us you're kind of like the step away from doing search and marketing day to day.
Exactly. So I kind of did this half step,
Yeah.
and started training teams to be confident. I've been doing that for years now. At this point, I've trained probably about 50,000 people all over the world, big teams, cool businesses. And then last year, I started Confidence Live, which is an in-person event. We have about 800 people in my hometown of Stoke. And the idea of that is, where I grew up, it's got a really, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah.
I just wanted to check. Where I grew up, it's got this reputation of being this real like shithole. And I think if you keep telling people where they grew up as shit, you internalize that you're shit. So the kind of mission of Confidence Live and the business that's associated with that is to just like galvanize the underdog and bring like joy and play and silliness to often forgotten people and forgotten parts of the country.
Fantastic. And obviously what's interesting to me about kind of the Confidence Live event is like, not lots of editions you've run yet, but each one that I've seen, it's like, it feels like there's this quite shared experience that's there, and that like there's a kind of togetherness that perhaps isn't necessarily the case from lots of like other events in inverted commas. Obviously that's kind of like a deliberate thing, but I'm kind of interested, Kirsty, in terms of like how you thought about, well, obviously that was the intention. How did you start to think about making that happen, right? Because it doesn't just like occur, because most professional events don't have that kind of sharedness. I'm struggling for the words to describe it, but I kind of know what I mean, and hopefully you've maybe thought about kind of the process of how that came to be and some of the decisions you made that allowed that to occur, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think I know exactly what you mean. And I think it was accidental in the sense of, when I first did this, the reason I started Confidence Live was I did a tweet, and it started with, if I organised a conference in Stoke, lol, would you come? And so then everyone was like, yeah, I'd come to Stoke. And so immediately it wasn't mine, it was ours. And so I think because I didn't suddenly one day be like, I have a conference, you should come. I think there was that, the people who came to the conference, of the people in my network, which are predominantly SEOs, like a family that you get adopted by. And so then as the event kind of grew, I think people were like, it exists because of the people that championed it early doors. So it's not mine. It never will be mine. It very much is for the people who come and of the people who come. And I think that was like built in, because it literally wouldn't have happened if people hadn't championed it. And I think that happens naturally when you do things that are kind of against the odds a little bit. When you do something that people, that feels difficult, and people really rally to support it.
Yeah, because that's interesting. So obviously it feels like, to an extent, there, it was the demand, or in desire for the event, or the coming together, sort of pre-existed the event, right? To some extent it was a response to, maybe the shared experience of people in your network, from the training, from your public speaking, from your audience, had kind of like enjoyed that, and was like, well, actually, yeah, an additional thing in this style of experience is something that they would be interested for. So therefore you didn't force it too early. It was almost the demand was there, right? Because you suggested it and people were like immediately the case. Is that similar, Areej, for you? Because obviously the journey was, the Slack group first, then maybe Facebook, then moving on to events, and then kind of like that allowing it to become like a business and like a bit more of a fully formed community off the back of that.
Yeah, I think we always say we're very much like community first events. We started off with having monthly meetups in London, just because I was in London. And so I remember the first one was like in a coffee shop, like 10 of us. And then the second one, we managed to get some office space, and there was 30 of us. And we kept doing that for a whole year, until like by the last one, it was like, okay, we can't have more than 100 people in this office space. And that's kind of where it was like, okay, maybe I really need to think about like having more space for us and holding us as like a full day conference. But actually, speaking of, I was thinking, Kirsty, with a lot of the Zoom webinars that you always do, and you did quite a lot of them during COVID as well. And those, it's almost like I feel like that in a way was its own community, because I've never seen people run webinars this way, where the amount of interaction and messages through chat and so forth. And I feel it was like creating that culture that really helped a lot of folks be like, well, we're already here, we're online, we tune into your webinars, and now we want to be able to see each other in person and, you know, like bring that celebration. And I feel like it's probably very similar with WTS as well, where people just want to finally see each other. Like they're talking to each other all year long on Slack and on Facebook. And now it's like, oh, wow, we get to, you know, come together in one room, celebrate each other, and actually, you know, hang out together in person. So yeah, like you, Kirsty, you just do that so well with a lot of your webinars and the way you kind of connect people in that way. And I think that's why everyone is more than happy to go to Stoke for sure.
Thank you. And it's interesting as you share that, because I think I do that really badly.
I think you do it so well.
I'm always like, I've created an event. The thing that I've been thinking at the moment is, you know, normally people build a community and then have the event, whereas I've done the event, but I don't have the community. So that's nice to hear. Thank you.
You're everyone knows your yes, yes, yes. Like that's such a staple Kirsty thing. And yeah, like those weapon, like the amount of energy in them, I personally never come across them in like any other webinar before.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it is that kind of challenge of, you know, virtual online events. So I'm kind of in like now because I'm an SEO who ended up running events and now find myself more as an events person in SEO rather than an SEO who runs events. And as a consequence of that, I've, you know, in my professional and personal development, made more of an effort to kind of connect to people who are in, you know, who run events. And yeah, it's kind of interesting that their challenges that they're faced are often kind of quite different, in as much as like they do have that kind of like a considered approach of like, okay, we're going to try and do this and like treat it in a business way. And actually many of their events are absolutely amazing. But it's quite interesting, that kind of like considered approach of how you might come to run a business of which events and communities are part of, which is quite different, I think, from more like organic. And that's not even necessarily meant with a value judgment associated with it. It's kind of like, well, actually, I think interesting things emerge when you don't go in with a specific plan. Do you think, like, Areej, is that one that's kind of like, obviously, you know, that's not to downplay the kind of role that you've had in kind of building this thing, but it's kind of, do you feel there's been a kind of like responding to the opportunities and the things as they present themselves, rather than a kind of like, here's A, here's Z, and here's the route between them? Do you think that's kind of had quite a big impact on how you
like
approach
even though
things?
I am such a planner, a lot of this worked out really well without planning it. I mean, for the first 4 years of running WTS, I was doing it alongside my full-time job. Like I had a normal 9 to 5. This was a lot of my evenings and weekends. And it's only in the last year where I was like, okay, this is not, and I enjoy this so much more than my full-time job. And so I want to focus a lot more in this and see how I can scale it and see how I can grow it. But yeah, a lot of it was responding to demand. I mean, I would have never thought we would have done a full day conference in the US last year. I only did it because we started having a lot of people fly in from the US to London and say, oh, why don't you come? Please come to us. We want you to. And so it was like, and the same with Berlin. It was one of those things where it was a lot of the community members were starting to do their own informal meetups. And it was like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of activity there. And so, and yeah, a lot of it, you kind of do it as you see what's happening and you decide to go from there. And I think there's something very cool about that, because it's something you're passionate about and you're growing and you're kind of trying to meet the demand of, you know, the community members that you have in place.
And I suppose, yeah, we've had a similar kind of journey as well with the US one for us, which obviously, yeah, I think there's something to be said for kind of waiting for it to become, when you get sick of people, in our cases, well, why haven't you done it, right? Rather than doing, well, what's the first point you should do this thing? It's been more of that kind of, let's wait for, like the in our case, the kind of attendees to kind of go, well, you know, why aren't you doing it? And for us, the real trigger was like the amount of speaker applications we were getting from people. And we have more people applying to the UK event to speak from the US than we did from Europe, not just the UK, of Europe as a whole. And it was for me kind of going, well, if these people are prepared, that they're so excited to be involved in it, you know, and attendees and sponsors, it kind of felt like it was a kind of missed opportunity eventually on that side of things. Kirsty, have you kind of like, you know, obviously like starting it off, you kind of had this, like, it started with a jokey tweet and then kind of became a bigger thing. Have you kind of like considered that in terms of like the longer term planning of that and how that fits with you? Because obviously you're, you know, a consultant, a trainer. It's kind of, I can see that, I suppose, as precedent for other kind of, this is, don't take this in the wrong way, kind of like as a personality of, that personal brand is a big part of, how you operate, right? And obviously the event's quite a logical way of doing that. But have you seen that as kind of it could be a distraction though, equally? Because I'm sure like the time that goes into producing Confidence Live could be handled in a quite different way for you. How do you weigh up that kind of, demands on your time personally?
Yeah, it's been really difficult. And one of the driving forces for Confidence Live, which I'm really pleased it seems to be doing quite effectively, is every business I've ever ran has been like the Kirsty show, and I've been the face of it and the brand. And that's great. But I was getting exhausted at the like commoditization of my personality. Like when your job becomes like bringing energy to a room, which is essentially what my job is. I was just getting really exhausted. So part of the thinking behind Confidence Live was to create something that wasn't me. And a lot of the feedback that I got after the first event was like, it was amazing, but we want more Kirsty. And I was like, no, you are getting less. I am in the wings. I am. So I wanted to create a stage to champion other people. And actually, I think Confidence Live is gathering momentum. And it's really nice when people don't know that it's like Kirsty's thing and people, it's just like a brand. And I think Confidence Live is doing that really well. So I think one of the things that I was trying to get it to do was to create something that existed outside of me. But it's definitely been challenging in terms of how it fits into the broader business. Like my consultancy work got quieter last year because I think people associated me with the conference. And so I had to be like, oh no, I still do loads of training. That's what pays for that. So yeah, it's an ongoing challenge about like kind of slotting it all in together. But my goal was to create something that wasn't Kirsty's thing. And I think it's doing that quite well, I hope.
It creates some interesting ego challenges. I kind of went through that for a period of time where it's like, obviously, like when we were originally doing it, it's kind of every email was from me. Not all of them written by me, but that was kind of the way that we do it. We still kind of do that. I will tweet it on my personal account rather than the work account, and there's a degree of that as well. And obviously moderating like I do is again sort of, it's easy to kind of get that trapped up in your own personal ego, and actually for good and ill in my case, I think, because it was one where it would have been, I take every negative bit of feedback incredibly personally, but then get elated by the positive feedback as well. And that was kind of was an interesting journey to kind of go, well, it's more than, you as an individual and you as a kind of event is kind of an interesting one to navigate. How have you found that, Areej? Because obviously, like it's the community. It very much is women in tech SEO, but it is, you've got a huge friendly community of which like you're at the center of. How do you kind of weigh up and deal with and like handle that kind of individual and the collective as a whole?
I don't even notice any of the positive feedback. I only overthink the negative feedback. I'm having feedback come through right now for our London event, and yeah, all the good ones. I'm like, yeah, next. Let me just. It's so hard, to be honest. Like, it's such a challenge, and I also, one thing I do struggle with a lot is our community is free. Our initiatives are free, like the mentorship program, the workshops, the podcast, and so on. But the event is not. The event has paid tickets and it has sponsors. We give as many scholarship tickets as we can, but that's something I struggle with a little bit because I'm like, I don't want to be salesy to my own free community. And that's a challenge that like it's constantly on my mind. Like I would love nothing more than to be able to hold like the biggest events ever and like give away as much free tickets as I can. But we just don't have the funding for that at the minute. And so there's always this struggle of you have this brilliant free community and you want to give them so much value, but then at the same time, you are kind of selling to them as well. And that's just a personal challenge that I'm kind of trying to figure out. Like,
yeah, I think personally, if you're kind of concerned about am I being too salesy, it's like then you're all right. It's the people who don't worry or think about that or have any of those kind of concerns that like their barometer would be different. So therefore, actually, the most salesy Areej would not be salesy in the context of compared to anyone else. And it's like, and I think it's like not a terrible thing to kind of, that things need to be sustainable, right? And like there's there are people who are very capable and comfortable to financially support things that allows you to then support people who would not otherwise be able to do that. And yeah, but it is interesting because like we had that journey, the event was free. then we do the pay for tickets, and we're a commercial organisation, right? You know, it's not a charity, right? That's kind of is running in a different way. But yeah, I can understand the kind of tension and pressure that kind of comes with that. Kirsty, is that kind of like, you know, because actually, is it like, you know, that's never, it doesn't feel like that's been your intent for running it. It's not like because like, I suppose the WTS fests fund the community, whereas I suppose Confidence Live, it's perhaps the other way around. Have you kind of weighed up that process of, you know, commercializing things? Because I've seen on LinkedIn you've been kind of like having some discussions and thoughts about how that works.
Yeah, I basically, so the first one, I mean, the reason I first did Confidence Live was I made some money in my business and I wanted to give back to the community I came from. That was the original. And then I did it, and it's so expensive organizing events. Like, it's, you know, I'm like a solo consultant that kind of bootstrap this essentially. It's so expensive, it's so scary. And so after the first one, everyone was like, Kirsty, I'm so excited for the next one. And when people said that, like, genuinely my heart sank, because it hadn't occurred to me that I would have to do it again. Like, it truly hadn't, because I was just going with it and it was unfolding in front of me. And I was like, wow, okay, I've got to do this again. And so then this year I became incredibly focused on profit, because I was scared, essentially. I was scared. So I was like, profit, profit, profit. I need to make money from it. I need to make money from it. And when I was really thinking about it as a commercial enterprise, I completely fell out of love with it. And it became a slog. And so that's what I've decided to make Confidence Live this year and probably going forwards, not for profit, just purely anything that we make in terms of profit, I'm going to give away to charity. This was always meant to be a mission-based business. And I think for me, this has to be that, because I do so much like buy my services and like other areas of my life. And I didn't want the conference to lose its integrity. And I think it was kind of losing. So it's very scary. And I'm really terrified, but I think that's good. Also, Areej, I read the Confidence Live feedback recently to just like make sure I had everything covered, and the few negative pieces of feedback made me feel physically sick. I thought about this today. Like I literally,
you probably remember every word, every single word. Like it's
It's an interesting, yeah, we don't do feedback forms. I mean, this is changing now because some of the team think we really should, and it's like I've kind of got to allow them to, you know, to have that. But like, I had a really great one where we kind of early days did it, and it was like we tried to keep it simple. So we'd have what did you like the most? What did you like the least? What should we do next time? That was kind of the 3 questions, just open text field. And I kind of going through the Google Sheets, and it was like this amazing one where I won't name the speaker because it doesn't matter, right? But the speaker came up, and like, so one bit of feedback was the best thing was, this speaker, they were absolutely amazing. Like, it wasn't like they changed my life, but it was like, as, you know, impressive as it possibly could be. And then the next one was that same speaker was shit and absolutely terrible, and you should never program them ever again. And I kind of went, well, so to me, when multi-track we do that, it's kind of like, well, actually, there are those people that are going to get the valuable bit that they're doing for that. My intention is like, well, let's find the bit for the other person to get their value as well. But it's like, and equally like speaker feedback as well. I got it when I used to do a bit more talking, where it's like, oh, I was 7.8 likable. Well, I really want to be 7.9 likable now. So I'm going to try and be more knowledgeable. You see, I mean, it's like I didn't ever feel like it was mega useful, but that's again like in my personality of how I handle these things, rather than perhaps the best way of kind of doing that there. So I'm going to ask like 3 questions to wrap us up. I'm aware we've kind of got a little bit longer than we already said we would, but I'm having a really interesting time chatting about this. So the first question would be kind of like, Areej, what's kind of like the future plans, right? As much as you can tell us about what you're going to do, and then I'll come to you, Kirsty, for that as well. But like in that kind of open-ended, what's like 2 years, 3 years? What's the kind of, or is that again you're going to find your way and feel your way through it? Because I know you're very organised, right? I know that you're kind of like, very.
I did write out like a full forecast plan, all of that stuff for this year. It's written like in some master plan somewhere, but I will kind of take it, 1 month at a time. I am, for the first year ever, decided to just dedicate all my time and energy on WTS, which is terrifying. But I also have a brilliant team that I work with now, which I'm just I'm so proud to be able to do that. So we'll kind of, we'll see how it goes. I think for now, continue to focus on community and events and see how much we can grow that.
But I think that's clarity of like your time will make a big difference as well. I think in terms of like having the the headspace to be that's the primary project you're working on, I think will make a big impact. How about Kirsty? So we sort of alluded to that a bit in terms of kind of the changes of the model, but what's the kind of broader Kirsty plan for the world domination over the next couple of years, as it were?
I think I've realized that the people in my network, the people who champion me and my business, there's a personality type. There are some people in the world who people are their like personality, like nurturing people, taking care of people. So I'm just focusing on them and creating like products and things for them. And I'm going to keep using Confidence Live as a way to gather and to bring people together and to educate people. And then off the back of that, make sure that I'm like adding loads of value to the people in my network who are like, I really care about people and I want people to feel awesome and amazing. And I want to be like my company's cheerleader. And so I'm going to make things for them and try, within the commercial reality of having to exist and eat, keep Confidence Live not for profit in the next few years, and try and stay sane and solvent is the general plan.
Fantastic. And so, yeah, and my two questions I always kind of close out the session with. So I'd like to go, Kirsty, what's kind of like a resource, a book, a podcast, in the inverted content, a piece of content that you might recommend to someone if they've kind of maybe enjoyed what you're talking about, or just in general as kind of a thing that...
Okay, because we were talking about it. There's this book, I recommend it all the time, called Self-Compassion.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've ever read it, Areej, but it basically changed my life. And it's for people who give ourselves a hard time, are mean to ourselves, focus on the negative feedback, beat ourselves up, tell ourselves we're not doing enough. It's genuinely life-changing. And I was thinking about it when we were all like, we hate that feedback. I was like, all of us need Dr. Kristen Neff in our life. So I always recommend that to people. I think it's remarkable and valuable. And I love
it. I'm going to get this today. I need it so badly.
And Areej, how about yourself? What would you recommend there in terms of people checking things out, or a place to go, or things to look at?
I want to recommend the FCDC, which it's a community for freelance coalition in developing countries. And the reason I want to recommend them is I absolutely love what they're doing, because from what they're doing as a community, their own members are starting to create other communities and events off the back of that. And I find, for me, this is like the true meaning of community, that you kind of create a space for people, and then the people in there start creating their own subgroups and events. And so, yeah, they're a free community. They're always looking for mentorship and support, FCDC. So yeah, definitely check them out.
Fantastic. And yeah, we'll drop all those in the show notes as well. And in terms of show notes, if people want to keep up with you, Areej, and kind of where's the kind of places where they would go about doing that, or kind of the websites that people should be going and checking out after they finish up?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and womenintechseo.com. It's got all the information you need on there.
And Kirsty?
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I live.
It's funny, isn't it? Like, I mean, like, because again, this is an aside that probably is not going to be mega useful to anyone else, but it is like, I was at this event last week for event organisers, and kind of like was telling the story a bit. It's kind of go, we were an event that came from Twitter, right? So I think like the search events that existed prior to us were like blogs. So they came from blogs and news websites. And then I think we came from Twitter, and I think probably in fairness, like WTS, and that's kind of come from Slack and groups in inverted commas. And yeah, it's kind of like, so for me, like that cultural shift from, you know, like I kind of perhaps slower to leave Twitter than perhaps other people would be, a little bit less reticent to go on LinkedIn. And like, actually, it's like, I find it jarring at times on LinkedIn, I'll be honest, but it is also like, yeah, it's proper now. Do you know what I mean? Like, and if people, it's like very positive, it's very supportive, and it's an interesting shift that's kind of gone on there as well. So yeah, always kind of fascinating to see how these things shift over time. But yeah, we'll drop the links into Kirsty and Areej there. I often would say this at the end of things, it's like we could talk for ages on this, but genuinely it did feel like we probably could have done 2.5 hours, which is a shame, but I'm not sure would be super mega interesting for absolutely everyone for the full duration of that. But I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone who's listened to us today really was, will have learned a lot from your experience and journeys. And I definitely recommend checking out Kirsty and Areej's work, because I think they do great stuff. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you all again soon. And yeah, please do keep in touch. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of the Internet Marketing Podcast, produced by the team behind brightonSEO, the world's largest specialist digital marketing conference covering SEO, PPC, paid social, web analytics, and content marketing. If you want to find out more about us and the show, you can check out the website, internetmarketingpodcast.org. And if you've not already subscribed to the show, you should hit that subscribe button. And can I ask a favour, if you are subscribed and you're enjoying the show, can you leave us a review wherever you're watching or listening to the show? And if you want to get in touch, become a guest on the show, or just generally feedback about what we're doing, you can always email me. That's kelvin@brightonSEO.com. So KELVIN@brightonSEO.com. Or of course, you can contact me on social media. So at LinkedIn or Twitter, my usernames are Kelvin Newman. See you soon.